Download Upside and start getting cash back wherever you roll. It's like having your own hype man. Get an average of 17% cash back at restaurants.
Oh, it's dinner time.
Average of 13% on groceries.
Get those groceries.
10 cents per gallon average cash back on gas.
It's go time.
Plus, cash back at participating convenience stores too.
Stacks on stacks.
Users can earn hundreds of dollars a year, 3 times more than other apps.
Upside, show me that money.
All right, we get it.
Get it.
It's easy. Just sign up for the free Upside app and start getting cash back for doing you. Download the free Upside app and use promo code DOYOU10 for an extra $10 cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's promo code DOYOU10 for an extra $10 on the free Upside app. Get cash back for doing you with the free app from Upside.
Progressive presents Adjusting to the Suburbs.
It never dawned on me how much walking I used to do until I bought a house in the suburbs. Like when I'd say, I'm going for coffee, of course I was walking, but now it's like 3 miles and no latte's worth that. I find myself inviting people on walks with me like it's a scheduled activity. This morning, my neighbor asked me what I'm doing, and I actually said, I'm going for a walk with Nancy.
Anyway, when you save with Progressive by bundling your home and auto, that's the easy part of adjusting to the suburbs. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliates and third-party insurers.
Welcome to the Vault Podcast, classic music reviews, presented by IV Creative. Now, here's your hosts, B. Cox and the crew.
Greetings and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Vault Podcast, classic music reviews, presented by IV Creative. It's a perspective of the classics from a fresh point of view. We appreciate you for taking your time and lending your ears to our perspective. You could be anywhere listening to anything, but you're right here with us, so we thank you. With you today is yours truly, B. Cox, and with me, I got my boy in here in the place to be, my boy J.O. Jay, thanks for joining us once again, and want to give a shout out to him and also to all the listeners out there. Guys, we are closing out this year on a strong note. We want to thank you all for joining us on our website on vaultclassicpod.com, all the streaming platforms of your choice, and as well on our YouTube channel. Lots of things happening there, guys. We promised a big end of the year, and we are delivering right here. So make sure that you all are going to vaultclassicpod.com, our website. You can check out all of our catalog, all of our past episodes. You can go there, get to our YouTube channel. All the social media links are on there as well. So you can visit us on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook, on TikTok as well. Yes, even TikTok. We plan on doing some great things on TikTok later on this year and also into the new year. So make sure y'all stay tuned. And in 2023, we are also planning some bonus segments to appear live in some live chats as well as some live shows. So make sure that y'all stay tuned in with the show. Y'all checking us out on vaultclassicpod.com. We have plenty of discussion topics that we want to cover, and we want to make sure y'all linked in. So make sure y'all tap in, vaultclassicpod.com. Follow us on all the socials. And thank you again to all the listeners out there stateside and worldwide for continuing to support us. As we always say here on the Vault, our motto is hashtag open the vault, hashtag nothing but the classics, aka MBTC. And today, I'm glad that I have Jay here with me. And we've talked about this since the beginning of the Vault Classic Music Reviews podcast. You identify certain albums that you want to go over. And of course, we all talk about the standard albums, the ones that we all talk about when we review classics is out there. So I'm glad to have Jay on here, particularly because of the album we're covering today. And I think when we first started about doing the podcast, Jay, this was probably one of the ones that I think even when it was me, you, Dave, and Damo, we identified an album that we were going to be psyched to cover and to review. And
yes, indeed,
it's one of these ones right here. Now, we talk a lot about foundational albums here when we talk about reviewing each one of these albums when they come up. Well, this is not just a foundational album. This is a cornerstone. And when you talk about the album that we're talking about today, there are not many albums that have had the impact that this has had in the 30 years it's been out. So without further ado, we're going to go back 30 years ago. And we're going to go back to December 15th, 1992, to none other than The Chronic by Dr. Dre, released on Death Row and Interscope Records, with a runtime of 62 minutes and 52 seconds. The producers on this, Dr. Dre, of course, the executive producer of Suge Knight himself. The singles from The Chronic, you know them and you know them well. Or at least you do. And if you don't know them, then I really have to consider whether or not you're a hip hop fan or not, to be quite honest. The first one, Nothing But a G Thing, released November in 1992. Dre Day, released May 20th, 1993. And Let Me Ride, released September 13th, 1993. This album, Jay, I mean, listen, we'll get into the discussion topic just in a minute, but Dr. Dre's The Chronic is on a very short list when we talk about albums that not only changed the game, but the best albums of all time regarding hip hop. I'm going to read a passage, Jay, from Albumism's review. They did a album anniversary. They usually do a retrospective every time of one of these albums that comes out. You know, the big anniversaries, obviously, 20, 25, 30, even 10. Right. Jesse Ducker from Albumism said this. He opens up the article like this. First sentence. The Chronic changed hip-hop music. Understatement of the year, but accurate. When Andre Dr. Dre Young released his debut album 30 years ago, he changed the genre's resonance going forward and defined the sound for an entire geographic region. The album is certified platinum, and its biggest single, Nothing But a G Thing, is one of the most beloved singles of the 90s. It turned Dre into the hottest producer on the planet and made the label that released the album, Death Row Records, into one of the popular culture's most recognized brands. If you'd have told me in the beginning of 1992 that Dr. Dre would be hip-hop's biggest superstar by the end of the year, I'd have thought that you were smoking some really powerful shit. While he was a genius of a beat maker for NWA, he was the least gifted rapper in the group. Yes, he was worse than Eazy-E. Eazy had a better voice and more charisma than Dr. Dre could ever manage. Dre spent a lot of time rhyming on NWA's second album, F.O. for Zaggin' in 1991, but it was mostly out of necessity as Ice Cube had left the group for numerous documented reasons. As 1991 drew to a close, Dre left the Definitive Gangster group for ostensibly the same reasons that compelled Cube to bounce. He linked with the Marion Suge Knight and started laying the foundation for the Death Row Enterprise. For his first post-NWA cut, Dre linked up with Calvin Snoop Doggy Dog Brodus, then a lanky youngster with a smooth conversational flow. The pair recorded the title track for Deep Cover's soundtrack, released in 1992 of April, then began recording The Chronic. And that's how that all starts. And I think it's important for those of us who have context, Jay, for those of us who listened to the album during that time, to sort of get an idea and let people know, like, where we were. Because, I mean, he's right. If you would have told a lot of people in 1992 that Dr. Dre would have been the biggest star in the game by the end of the year, people would have really thought that you were smoking some serious shit, because we all knew Dre to be, you would have been smoking the Chronic. Absolutely. And so people knew Dre as a big producer, NWA's producer. And then when he left and then started on Death Row, I think it was a surprise to a lot of people, but I don't think anybody ever thought that the impact this album would have had. And so when we get into talking about the Chronic, Jay, I think for those of us who were out and around during that time, and I was, 10 when this album came out, we'll get into that in just a second, but I think it's important to note that this really did kind of hit us all out of nowhere, thinking that Dre would be able to drop a project just like this that would not only be big, but probably bigger than anything he ever did with NWA or anything he had done prior to that. So now we're going to go ahead and get into it.
First thoughts and reflections.
So, Jay, I'm going to go to you. Your reflections on the Chronic and what you thought about it when it first came out, what you think about it in the 30 years since it's been out there in the atmosphere and recognized as one of the best hip-hop albums of all time.
Oh, man, 30 years, it's like, dang, for one, it's like, where the time go? But I was 11, I was in 6th grade, and at that time, like, Nothing But a G Thing and Blue, I'm saying, was, like, everywhere. And I don't want to say it was the introduction to Snoop Dogg, but like, because, Deep Cover came out just before that.
That summer, yeah.
Right, so like, what I'm saying? Like, that beat was just infectious. And then, I don't want to say I thought it was like a flash in the pan, but like, it's like, okay, Deep Cover, that joint was fire, but then, okay, what's next? Like, so then Nothing But a G Thing came out, and I never forget, like, it was everywhere. But then I was in my 6th grade class. That time we had like not a substitute teacher, but like teachers, assistants, the people that want to go into the education field.
Yeah.
So we had this bad one named Miss Howard. I don't know what she's doing now, but like, so like, so you know what I'm saying. So like at that time, she probably like 19, 20, like into the hip hop scene. So like we had the radio playing in the classroom, and she was just singing along to the joint like 1, 2, 3 into the folks. You know what I'm saying? Like, surprised me. I mean, it's like I knew she was older, but like I'm thinking, so she's gonna be that stern teacher tip. Like,
yeah, right.
Now she rocking this joint along with us. Like, okay, like,
Yeah.
you fine, and you like good music. So you're a win-win.
It's a
like,
winner. Exactly. Yeah.
Then the album comes out. I wasn't old enough to get it. Like, I had older people around me listen to that joint, and I was blown away. Like, sonically, it was dope. Like, well put together.
Yeah.
I don't think I've had an album before. Like, I just replayed the intro God knows how many times. That intro is still like one of the hardest I've ever heard to this day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
With those synthesizers and that Impeach the President sample.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
those drums. Yeah.
that joint hit hard as shit.
Oh, yeah.
But then, like, you know what I'm saying, going into the album, I knew I was listening to dopeness. I didn't know I was listening to greatness. Like, to reflect on it 30 years later, I'm still listening to that joint now. Even, like, just people in general. People still play the album today.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's still, like, I put it in the same league as, say, like, Thriller or something like that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Or, like, I don't cross over to a different audience. Or, like, Abbey Road by the Beatles. You know what I'm saying? Like, you still got, like, hardcore Beatles fans, like, that still play the album today.
Yeah.
It's just like, dang, this thing just really held up. Like, I was really blessed to sit here and witness this. I'm not hearing about it, like, you know what I'm saying, like, after the fact when I wasn't even thought of or something. Like, I was here for this. I remember the impact. I still see the impact.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we were young. That's the thing about it. Like, we were young,
Right.
but we weren't young enough to not realize and understand how big an impact of an album was. Like, honestly, I think this was the first album that I realized, like, I was old enough to be able to realize and be aware of how big the impact was when it first came out. Like, other albums that come out that I knew was big, like, you know, Fear of a Black Planet by Public Enemy. Other albums, you know, Low End Theory by Tribe Called Quest. I mean, you kind of understand. But I think at the point, like, in the mirror off of you, I was just a grade behind you. So I was in 5th grade. At this point, we're listening to the radio every day. I'm listening to it when we're riding home from school. Also on the way to the grocery store with mom when she lets us put it on 95 and 93. And it was all over the radio station then. It's not hyperbolic to say that in the article it says that it changed hip-hop, because it did. Honestly, there have been lots of West Coast albums out there. We talked about The Predator with Ice Cube just a couple of weeks ago. We also talked about as well The Far Side, Bizarre Ride to the Far Side a couple of weeks ago earlier. You talk about DJ Quick's Quick is the Name, NWA, Straight Outta Compton. For my generation, I actually want to say that this may have been the first one for our generation that it really introduced us to what West Coast life was like popular culture wise. I think there have been lots of albums that were out there, but this album commercially was so big. And then it wasn't just the music that you were hearing, it was also the music videos that they were shooting. You remember the music video for Deep Cover J. You also remember the music video for Nothing But a G Thing, and also Dre Day, you know?
Absolutely.
So the visuals that you saw with life in Southern California made the West Coast cool to a lot of us, you know? Before we even knew what California life was like outside of Saved by the Bell and other shit on television with white people, for us, for black people, for the culture, really, Dr. Dre's The Chronic helped make being on the West Coast seem really fucking cool. It did. It gave you the visuals of riding around and goddamn who rides and shit. Goddamn a ride on hydraulics and shit. Parties and shit. Sunshine. Beautiful girls. The parties being out of fucking control with 40 ounces of shit and music and the big ass speakers. Just really Southern California living. It made that shit seem really fucking cool. And it also made the hood life in Southern California seem really fucking cool. Even though we're talking about this album getting released just like The Predator being released right in the shadows of the fucking LA riots happening not even 6 months earlier, you know? So this is being created in the backdrop of where there's chaos and turmoil in Southern California, and it sort of takes you away from what was happening there and makes you forget all about what the fuck was happening in LA with the shit with the fucking riots. Why? Because this album was a soundtrack that made living on the West Coast seem like it was the fucking greatest thing in the world. Like, the fact that you could get New York heads going over where they don't, at the one point in time, it was almost sacrilege for you to listen to some shit that wasn't New York hip hop out on your shit, and people wouldn't clown you. And a lot of New York heads would tell you that. The fact that this made folks in New York and down south, the Midwest, and eventually globally go ahead and pump this shit to be able to identify with a culture, like they said on the article, Jesse Ducker said, it definitely defined the sound for an entire geographic region. And Dre didn't create the quote-unquote G-Funk sound. You could definitely give a lot of other West Coast producers credit with helping to shape that alongside with him. But when you talk about the prime architect, it was Dr. Dre. The production on here, top notch. Some of the things production-wise are things that are still being studied to this day that people can't replicate, those bass lines, the samples, the way that they were sampled, the way that he took multiple samples in different songs and used them twice, that Impeach the President sample was used twice in this record. And you can't even tell that it was being used twice unless you have a really keen ear. The skits in here, the fact that so many things in here came a part of popular culture lexicon, D's nuts, biatch.
Right.
Seriously, you know what I'm saying? Like the fact that the Chronic then became known as a synonym for fucking really dope weed, come on, man. When you talk about culture shifting, this album is a culture shifting album. And for all of us who were out and around during that time, this album not only changed the way that we listen to hip hop, it changed the way that we listen to music. You're right, Jay. It is sort of on the level when you want to talk about albums and other genres that shifted the way that music was. That Thrillers, the Stevie Wonders, Songs in the Key of Life, the Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, the Beatles albums you were talking about. It is, this is an album that when you look back, it's like, dog, man, this shit really did change some things. And there are maybe about 5 to 10 albums in hip hop that really changed the culture when they came out and shifted the way that things were done. We're going to go ahead and get into the track list now.
Highlights and lowlights.
So, Jay, let's go ahead and get into it. This 16 tracks on the Chronic. Go ahead and give me your highlights and any lowlights, if there are any.
Oh, for sure. So, and again, I like to take it away from the joints that were popular on the radio. But like I said before, the Chronic intro, that shit just slaps. I wish that would have been like an actual song. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because that, again, the way it was put together was just so perfect.
Yeah.
High powered, lyrical gangbang, rat-tat-tat, bitches ain't shit. Of course, D's nuts, little ghetto boy, which I was surprised, I saw an article back from 93 and they was reviewing the Chronic and they actually slammed little ghetto boy. I'm like,
it was the source. It was the source review.
The source, yeah.
It was the source review. I'm
like, what? I was rocking with that joint. Of course, Number the G thing and Dre Day and all, and Let Me Ride, the ones that were singles for was slapping. But oh, of course, a nigga with a gun, because I was again, I like the way that was put together when I figured out what samples were used for that.
Yeah.
And the fact they used that Houdini joint for the beat.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, that told me that was left field.
I know, right? Yeah.
Plenty of highlights, but lowlights. It's funny, I would normally consider this a low light as far as the faking aspect when the day the niggas took over.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah.
The shit was so fire, I actually had to give him a pass on that one.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I understand.
For one, the shit was fire, and two, okay, West Indians on the West Coast, so you might be hard pressed to find a Jamaican something to start riffing and spitting that patois over there. So I could let it slide this go around. So I didn't really think the doctor's office skit was necessary. Just my opinion.
Hey man, those Death Row skits used to be OC out there back in the day though, man.
And I actually kind of highlight and a low light, the $20 sack pyramid. It was funny.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I would rock with it. But it kind of just made me upset again. It's dang, man. It's that what if moment as far as D.O.C.
Yeah, I know, man.
Because I think that might have been the first time I heard D.O.C.'s voice since the accident. It's
yeah.
Dude, thank God you still with us. But damn, man.
Yeah.
What would have been you know what I'm saying? Had you gone to Death Row.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen. I think he'd have been up there with Snoop.
He definitely would have been up there with Snoop.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's why I say it's highlight and low because it still makes you wonder dang, what could have been? Even though he was a contributor as far as a writer and he still had a career.
Yeah.
But him to be to reinvent himself as an artist, post NWA, it's damn, it's the what if moment.
It makes you think, man, because no one can do it better, and no one. That's a classic, right? And so, how many more classic albums could he have dropped with Dre's production on Death Row? You know what I mean?
I always say he's the greatest living hip hop tragedy.
Yeah, man, bruh.
You know what I'm saying?
Woo, there's one right there. Hip hop's greatest living tragedy, my nigga. Yes,
that's really how I feel about D.O.C.
Yeah.
Download Upside and start getting cash back wherever you roll. It's like having your own hype man. Get an average of 17% cash back at restaurants.
Oh, it's dinner time.
Average of 13% on groceries.
Get those groceries.
10 cents per gallon average cash back on gas.
It's go time.
Plus, cash back at participating convenience stores too.
Stacks on stacks.
Users can earn hundreds of dollars a year, 3 times more than other apps.
Upside, show me that money.
All right, we get it. It's easy. Just sign up for the free Upside app and start getting cash back for doing you. Download the free Upside app and use promo code DOYOU10 for an extra $10 cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's promo code DOYOU10 for an extra $10 on the free Upside app. Get cash back for doing you with the free app from Upside.
And now another no-brainer money-saving tip from Progressive.
It looks like your luggage is over 50 pounds. Is there anything you can take out?
Oh yeah, let me just toss all these $20 bills.
Great. Let me grab you a trash can.
Stop. Instead of throwing money away, move some clothes into a carry-on. And here's a better tip from Progressive on how not to waste money. Don't pay too much for car insurance. Drivers who switch and save could save hundreds. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary.
Yeah.
As far as like other lowlights, I really ain't got them besides that.
Yeah, man. The samples of some of these samples on here, man, the way that they flipped them, it's ridiculous, man. Being able to take, like you said, that Friends by Joint by Houdini on a nigga with a gun, man. The fact that he used Led Zeppelin when the levee breaks on Lyrical Gangbang, like, right. Yo, wow, man. It's also notable that Dre took a few shots on here. Of course, there were shots at Easy. All over this, you know.
Absolutely.
And for good reason why, because, you know, he had left Ruthless and went to Death Row for a lot of different reasons, basically because of the same reasons why Cube did. But then there were also lots of shots on here to Cube, you know. Obviously, everybody knows the big one that was on Nothing But a G Thing, mobbing like a motherfucker, but I ain't lynching, you know. Right. So he also took a shot on them on Let Me Ride. Also, he took shots at Tim Dog, too. You know what I'm saying? So
shit, worse is on the $20 sack pyramid.
I know. And Snoop was definitely in there taking motherfucking shots too, man. Like, you know, he definitely had his lieutenant on his side, and Young Boy was there ready to take some shots. But my highlights, obviously, on here, other than the singles, I mean, Nothing But a G Thing, that's on the short list for best hip hop songs of all time. You can't convince me otherwise. I'm sorry. Dre Day, I mean, great song right there. Obviously, very well put together. Those samples, that Atomic Dog, and then the Not Just Knee Deep by Funkadelic. This is a song he took and crafted basically by using Parliament, which would be a recurring thing that Dre did, obviously, with Death Row. Not only with his project, but then also with Snoop's project as well. Snoop and Dre having great verses on there. And may she rest in peace, Jewel, with the outro vocals just completely killing it. She killed it on a few songs on here, man.
Still can't believe she
gone. It passed earlier this year, May of 2022. She was the first lady of Death Row Records. She helped to make that song what it was, because without those vocals, it's not what it is. And I don't know if you remember, but when Backyard took a couple of samples from this on one of their joints, you know, when they definitely, the end of it, you know, that biatch and then her vocals. And they took that and used that during the, when they used to hit that there's some hoes in this house. And they used to have either it was White Mike or the other keyboarder basically playing at the vocal samples as they were playing, man. So this is definitely something I remember because I used to listen to that when I listened to that Backyard 4695 from the Met. You'd be able to hear like one of the first times they used those vocal samples for that song. Let Me Ride, obviously another great song on here. I mean, not really a whole lot more to say about that, but to the album tracks that are on here. I love The Day That the Niggas Took Over because I love that fucking beat, bro. Right. Like being able to use that BDP sample of Love's Gonna Get You. Whew, man. And then also taking like stuff with the documentary that they produced as well from what happened earlier. We talked about the riots, and although everybody kind of killed it, I did like to also to go back to what you were talking about, the Jamaican accent, because like, yo, you just had someone who listened like they were a Jamaican who was perfectly on the beginning of Let Me Ride. They did that wasn't a Jamaican. It was convincing enough, you know.
Oh,
so,
true, yeah.
You know, but nah, that joint slaps completely. The beat for D's Nuts, man. My goodness. And including that whole thing by Rudy Ray Moore, but in the beginning, you know, talking about some, you know, if you had some balls here, whatever, if you got some balls on your chin, then you got dick in your mouth. So, but beat, ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And everybody does their job on here from Daz to Dre. And then you had the outro with the first time, I want to say probably the I Heard Nate Dogg. So classic and vintage Death Row right there. I was surprised like you, Jay, when they talked about Little Ghetto Boy. And that was a song when going back and looking at that source review, which by the way, they gave The Chronic 4.5 mics in their first rating. And I hate to have to think that was the reason why they gave it 4.5 mics, because they didn't like Little Ghetto Boy, which is crazy because that's, to me, I think one of the better songs on the album. But love that joint, love the stories being told on there, taking that sample from Donny Hathaway, and then also I Get Lifted by George McCrae. Craziness, man. Love A Nigga With a Gun. Also love Rat-a-Tat-Tat as well. The skits on there, 20 Sack Pyramid, I thought was funny. I think when I heard that and I went back to listen to it earlier this week, I laughed my ass off harder than I probably did even back then, because, it's like, what was that? It's like my dick in your mouth. What the thing that Tim Dog does? Because,
oh, fuck me that. Things Tim Dog say.
Yeah. High Powered, this is when you hear Lady of Rage on here as well, RBX. And then I do actually like Stranded on Death Row. I know that some people, when we looked at some lists, there are probably people that say that they don't like that track overall, but to hear Bushwick Bill on the intro and the outro, and I think everybody did their job on here. The samples on here banging. You hear Snoop be able to close the song out there as well. Honestly, just no lowlights on here. The only lowlights I think that I possibly would have is, no, I don't really have anything, to be quite honest. I mean, everything here just is well placed and well timed. And what I love is the fact that there were so many different contributors on here that were all Death Row people, save for Bushwick Bill. Like, this was a team effort. Like, it was almost like this was going to be the first project that Death Row was going to put out, and they were like, all right, the whole team got to come together to make this happen. So this is sort of our introduction to the world outside of the deep cover soundtrack. Here we are, Dr. Dre, the architect of Death Row sound, is going to bring out something that is going to define this sound for the next few years and also define the region. So no lowlights really, man. Production on here, great. Lyrics on here as well. Big shout out, of course, to D.O.C. Like you said, Jay, I'll give it to you. Hip-hop's greatest living tragedy. The co-writing credits on here, look at it, just from Nothing But a G Thing, A Nigga With a Gun, Little Ghetto Boy. Also he was on 20 Sack Pyramid. The voice that you heard, obviously, after the accident, which is something that I didn't even think about when listening to it at first. I was like, yeah, well, you know what? That's absolutely right. And then also on Bitches Ain't Shit, So, lots of great co-writing credits on this, man. To me, now, Dre, the sound itself is sort of what made everything go. But then when it came to writing, really, I want to say, man, the heroes on this got to be Snoop and D.O.C. So,
yeah, for sure.
Absolutely, man.
Notable quotables.
So now we go over to notable quotables. And Jay, what do you got as far as notable quotables are concerned?
Well, it's me surprised. It was already established, and I do agree with Dre. Never really been a rock him on the mic. Mm-hmm. But I will say his joint on Bitches Ain't Shit.
Okay, yeah.
And of course, I used to know a bitch named Eric, right? We used to roll around and fuck the hoes at night. Tighter than the motherfucker with the gangster beats, and we was balling on the motherfucking Compton streets. Peep the Shit got deep and it was on #1 song after #1 song. Long as my motherfucker pockets was fat, I didn't give a fuck where the bitch was at. But she was hanging with a white bitch doing the shit she do, sucking on his dick just to get a buck or two. And a few ends you got didn't mean nothing. Now she suing cause shit that she be doing ain't shit. Bitch can't hang with the street, she found herself short. So now she taking me to court. It's a real conversation for your ass to recognize past the Daz. So pretty sure Dre didn't write that, but
yeah.
It still stuck out as far as you know what I'm saying? As far as this is apart from Dre Day, you know what I'm saying, of course, but definitely set the stage for Easy to come back with his diss, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That they had a nice little back and forth going for a nice little while, man, between Dre Day and then Real Motherfucking G's, and so there were a lot of things going back and forth, and of course Easy was out there and made it no, he wanted everybody to think that, he made Dre, and the reason why Dre was the what he was, it was because of Easy. You know what I mean? Right. So the one thing that I definitely wish they would have done is that they would have fully been able to patch up their relationship before Easy had passed away. They referenced it a little bit in the movie, but, I really would have wished they would have been able to repair the damage that was done to that relationship as a result of them leaving. And I think Dre kind of referenced that not only in 2001, but then also in the Compton album as well, where he talked about Easy extensively. So, yeah. My notable quotable actually comes from Little Ghetto Boy, and it's from Snoop's verse, the first verse. And, it's funny because I think about this verse that this was one that actually, I think that it was the basis of where one of the samples of The Evils with Jay-Z came from. And of course, also as well, this is the first time that I think we all heard was Murder Was the Case That They Gave Me before the damn Murder Was the Case came out a couple of years later when Snoop was actually being charged with murder. So talk about some foreshadowing of a couple of years down the road. My goodness. So, but yeah, this stands out to me because of that, but then because of other reasons. Wake up, jumped out my bed. I'm in a 2-man cell with my homie Lil Half Dead. Murder was the case that they gave me. Dear God, I wonder, can you save me? I'm only 18, so I'm a young buck. It's a riot. Now don't scrap, I'm getting stuck. But that's the life of a G, I guess. Essays way deep, shank 2 in the chest. Best run, cause the brothers drop it quicker. Too late, damn, down goes another nigga. Bouncing off the walls, throw them dogs. Get that rep as a young hog. It ain't nothing like the street life. You better be strapped with your shank, cause ain't no fist fight. So I guess I got to handle mine. Since I did the crime, I got to do the time. And so we talk about this, the foreshadowing in that verse. He talks about him being only 18. Murder was the case that they gave me, and everything else. A song, again, what I think one of the better songs here on the album. I mean, obviously there are lots of great quotables on this. Nothing But a G Thing to me is a song as a quotable. Let Me Ride to me is a song as a quotable. And then you also, I think, on this album got to see a lot of foreshadowing of what you would see, like Lady Rage putting out a project later on in Death Row. Dog Pound putting out a project later in Death Row. And as we would find out, not even a year later, Snoop coming out, which I want to say, and somebody said this on Twitter, and I think I might agree with them. I would be interested to hear what you say as well, Jay. Said that Snoop, at the time he was putting out his album, put out probably the most anticipated album in hip-hop history, you know, when he came out with Doggy Style, you know? And so I'm thinking, right? And I'm like, well, did anybody put out something that was probably as anticipated as Doggy Style was? And I can't think of anyone. You know, not one. I mean,
it was some slaps that came out that year, but like not the way Doggy Style was. Like,
yeah. Well, remember, Doggy Style dropped right around the same time or in the same period that 36 Chambers and Midnight Marauders came out. Same year that Enter the Stage came out. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you think about, man, that's going to be next year. We're actually going to be doing all those next year, man. So, our notable quotables, man. Lots of quotables on this album, though. Just a couple that me and Jay referenced.
Shit, I ain't like, you made me thinking about I was sice as hell. I got that joint for Christmas in '93. You know what I'm saying? Like the Doggy Style album.
Oh, you got it for Christmas?
Yes, sir.
Oh, man. Dude, you already know I wasn't going to be able to get that joint, man. But you know what I did do? Ask somebody at school for a dub, man.
That was the way.
Yeah, ask somebody at school for a dub, and I went ahead and kept it in a blank tape with no label on it because I didn't want anybody to think in the house to be able to see that it was Snoop Dogg. So I kept it on the label, and I kept the tape underneath I had a Redskins helmet, Washington Redskins helmet up in my closet. So underneath that helmet, I put the tape. And that's when I knew that I was keeping Doggy Style. So if I need to get it and I didn't want to get it mixed up, bam, here's my Doggy Style tape. You know what I mean? Because I had it on the dub and I didn't put the label on the tape. So, yeah, crazy. Good times, man. Let you know, for those of y'all who are listening out there, understand the links that we went to for music that had parental advisory stickers on there. We wanted to hide that shit from our parents so it didn't get stolen. Some of us, at least, you know what I'm saying? I was only able to get rap music for Christmas and my parents be okay with it when I was in high school. And only because my sisters gave it to me. My mom and dad wasn't really having that shit, though. But for those of y'all who parents was all right with that shit, though, definitely kudos to y'all. I had to hide my shit, though. So, yeah. Yeah.
Final verdict.
Spoiler alert, you know, look. I'll go ahead and send it to you, Jay, man. Classic, essential, dope, just okay, or not dope?
Man, you already know, man. Classic. I'm going 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
All things considered, 10 out of 10 classic.
10 out of 10. Classic for me as well, 10 out of 10. It's an album we talk about foundational. You want to talk about cornerstone. This is a cornerstone album. You want to talk about how big the West Coast became. And we started talking about it a little bit in the earlier years, Jay. And also we talked about The Predator, Quick as the Name, a couple other West Coast albums, Cypress Hill's first album. Honestly, this is the album that really shifted the focus all the way over to the West Coast. Because all that stuff we talked about, all classic albums, right? I named all those albums we named. We have established those as classic albums. But this is the one that shifted the focus all the way over to the West Coast. When we said that in 92, that really is starting as early as mid-90, things started to shift over to the West Coast. And there was sort of like attention being paid to what was happening in California. But by the time this happened in the end of this year, by the time 93 rolled around, oh yeah. The West Coast had it. You know what I'm saying? We talk about the shifting in dynamics, the way that the South sort of right in the middle of like 05, heading into like 06, the South started to shift to take over the game completely. This was that time period in hip hop. It's really when they started to take over when this album came out. And from that point, they sustained that momentum probably for another, I would say, 2 to 3 years until you had the releases of Ready to Die and Illmatic in 1994, even at the end of 93 with Midnight Marauders and with 36 Chambers. Heading into 95 is really then when the momentum started to shift really a little bit back in between New York and the West Coast. A foundational album, something that if you have it on vinyl, it is a prized possession. Something that if you look on streaming platforms, you can no longer find it. Why? Well, for those of y'all who have been under a rock the last year or so, Snoop Dogg actually gained the rights to Death Row's catalog, I believe. Snoop Dogg has taken The Chronic and Doggy Style off of streaming platforms with the intent of turning them into NFTs. I don't know how I feel about that, but, you know, it is what it is. It's not really too much we can do about it now. But if there is anybody that I wish that had possession of The Chronic and Doggy Style, it will either be one or two people. It will be Dre or it will be Snoop. So I'm glad that it's in the hands of someone who was an architect on that album and helped to make the album become what it was. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. The Chronic by Dr. Dre. A classic album. Jay and I both say so. 10 out of 10. Make sure you go check it out. Not on streaming platforms, but if you have a physical copy, go out there and go check it out. Go buy it. I'm telling you, the vinyl will not be wasted. It will definitely be a collector's item. We'll be talking about this album for another 20 years after this when it's 50 years old. And when Jay and I are old and gray, you better believe we'll be telling our kids about it when they become teenagers and adults. So
I might just go out and cop it on vinyl just cuz, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. I know I tried to look out there on the secondary market, man. It's definitely not cheap if you try to go buy it. I think it's worth it to go get it, though. Without a doubt. So, what do y'all think? Let us know what you think about The Chronic. Hit us up on vaultclassicpod.com, also on Twitter and also on TikTok and Facebook. What do you remember about The Chronic? What are some of your best memories about the album? Also, do you agree with us that it's a classic and a foundational album? Hit us up. Let's continue the conversation. We love to hear what you think. And that is going to wrap up yet another edition of The Vault. Please make sure you are visiting us at vaultclassicpod.com. That's vaultclassicpod.com. There you can learn more about the show, check out our past episodes, join our mailing list, leave a review, or if so inclined, you can leave us a voice note. Click the blue microphone in the bottom right-hand corner to leave us a voice note to let us know what you think about the show, or to just show us some love. To support the show, click the coffee cup shaded in yellow in the bottom left-hand corner to access our Buy Me a Coffee page. On Buy Me a Coffee, you can give a small monetary donation to support the show to ensure that we can keep the vault open for many years to come. You can also visit us on social media at Vault Classic Pod on IG, Twitter, and on TikTok. Also hit us on YouTube and our Facebook page. Like and follow us on social media, subscribe to the pod and the YouTube channel. We do it here all for you. We appreciate the support, and if you have a friend, tell a friend, and make sure that that friend tells a friend. Always remember to keep your headphones on and your music loud, but not too loud. And as we close, we'd like to remind everyone to dream big, because dreams are the basis for creation. Always create, motivate, and elevate, because you were never destined or created to stay stationary or ordinary in this life. And on that note, we say peace.
Thank you for listening and coming into The Vault. Please subscribe and visit us at vaultclassicpod.com. That's vaultclassicpod.com.
Download Upside and start getting cash back wherever you roll. It's like having your own hype man. Get an average of 17% cash back at restaurants.
Oh, it's dinner time.
Average of 13% on groceries.
Get those groceries.
10 cents per gallon average cash back on gas.
It's go time.
Plus, cash back at participating convenience stores too.
Stacks on stacks.
Users can earn hundreds of dollars a year, 3 times more than other apps.
Upside, show me that money.
All right, we get it. It's easy. Just sign up for the free Upside app and start getting cash back for doing you. Download the free Upside app and use promo code DOYOU10 for an extra $10 cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's promo code DOYOU10 for an extra $10 on the free Upside app. Get cash back for doing you with the free app from Upside.
Diamonds, silver, and gold? Oh my! Find your love language at JCPenney's Valentine's Day jewelry sale. Enjoy dazzling deals with your JCPenney credit card and coupon, like up to 70% off jewelry and up to 60% off modern bride rings. Plus, say yes please to $25 diamonds and gemstones while they last. Happy Valentine's Day. JCPenney. Offers valid on select styles through 2/20, subject to credit approval. Yes please jewelry excluded from coupons. Other exclusions apply. See store or jcp.com for details.